Thanks for being here, the fourth in our series of conversations with interesting, fascinating people who are either make Nashville home or are here for special purposes as our guest tonight. Our guest tonight is a successful film and television producer for more than 2 decades. He's worked around the world and across the country with every major television network, producing movies, including Edgar Floats and Then Came Jones, and TV series including The O.C., A Gifted Man, and Life. Working with Lionsgate Films, he's currently producing the ABC hit Nashville, which is shot on location and on soundstage right here in Nashville. Join me now in welcoming our special guest tonight, Loucas George. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And welcome.
Nice to be here.
And we're glad to have you in Nashville, glad to have the show here. And congratulations on the news today that ABC has extended you to a full season.
Well, thank you very much.
Tell us what that means.
Well, network television shows usually do 22 episodes for a year, a season. But normally what they'll do is we'll shoot pilots. So remember we shot a pilot here. And they'll probably do like 10, 20 pilots. And out of those 20 pilots, they'll pick up 4, 5. Once they've picked up a pilot, they'll pick you up for 12 shows usually. So that's your front. And that usually takes you through the Christmas, New Year's period. And during that time, the show will air and they'll see what kind of ratings you're getting. And then they'll decide if they're going to pick you up for the full year, which is your back 9. And they pick you up for the back 9, and then you have 22, and then the following year they'll pick you up for a full 22 as opposed to splitting it up. But they sort of, guard their bets up front and want to make sure that the show's a success before that goes. So you'll see a lot of shows that have come out that'll start to air, and then they won't go any further than that. There's a bunch of shows right now that have only had script pickups instead of real pickups. So they've picked up more scripts, and they're going to see how they look, and they're going to decide later on whether they're going to continue on with the series or not.
Great. How many of you are watching the show? All right. How many of you are watching it the night it airs? How many of you are watching it DVR on demand? Very interesting. All 3 ways. That's great. She's really hooked. All right. Let me disclose that I'm doing some work with the show and Ryman Properties, formerly Gaylord, and we're all obviously very interested in keeping the show in Nashville. It could be shot anywhere.
As many shows are.
As many shows are. Share your thoughts about the value of doing it here versus somewhere else.
Well, I think there's a lot of shows you just see shot in New York, but they're shot in L.A. or they're, Dallas and they're shot in L.A. or Providence and shot in L.A. And I think there's something missing from, I'm from New York originally, so when I see a show that's shot in L.A. for New York, I notice that the streets are a lot cleaner than they should be. And there's a certain energy that's missing there. I think this show in particular, though, is Nashville leads a lot to it because of the music component, and Nashville having such a strong music business here with so many people here in the music business, it sort of has lent itself to the energy and I think the realism too to the show. I mean, when I first came out, I got a script for the show, and I loved the script, but I really didn't know what the Bluebird was. I really didn't know what the Opry was. I had an idea about the Opry, but I really didn't know what it was. And I came out right away with the script and went to the Bluebird, and I went to the Opry, and I went to the Loveless Cafe, and I went to the other things that were in the script that I thought was part of Nashville. And and when I went to some of these places, I think it sort of said, it was when I went to the Bluebird, for instance, it's in a strip mall. It's very, uninspiring, I guess, from the outside would be the word, or as ABC says, it's not aspirational. And when I went in and I sat through the first, my first time I went to the Bluebird, and I sat there and I saw Don Schlitz. I was lucky enough to see Don Schlitz. And I really didn't know who Don Schlitz was until I realized he'd wrote The Gambler and he'd written all these other songs, and he was so entertaining. I just thought, I was just really lucky. I've hit a really special night and had a really special time. And I was totally taken by the church pews and how everybody becomes very quiet, and God forbid you talk on the phone during a performance. and gave me a whole other idea of what the Bluebird was, you know, and the way people talk about it and people who were there, the way they treat it. And I came to realize, I mean, with my second and third trip to the Bluebird, every show was as good or better than the last. I came to realize that the Bluebird is, it's more than just a store and a strip mall, you know. And I mean, the normal tendency, I think, would be for, you know, and we had that kind of, you know, input back from ABC. It was like, could we make it brighter? Could we make it bigger? Could we make it nicer? And I came to realize, no, that's not the Bluebird. I mean, and I think if the show had a brighter, bigger Bluebird that wasn't the real Bluebird, that the show wouldn't be the show that it is. And I think that's the kind of thing which we're getting by being in Nashville, is getting a better understanding of that and being able to show some of that and get that energy that we're getting from the musicians and people that we're meeting here that are working on the show. And I think it brings that energy, which is not always, you know, tangible, but is there nonetheless. And you can see it, I think, in the show, I hope.
And we now have 2 Bluebirds.
Yeah, now we have 2 Bluebirds, exactly. We have, well, we built a Bluebird. You know, when we shot the Bluebird, it's a very tight space to shoot in, and it had its challenges, plus not to mention the stores on either side of it, which, despite their look, are very high-end. Didn't want to close down necessarily, and it was problematic for us to shoot there. So we've built the Bluebird on our stages now, and we shoot there, which makes it a lot easier for us to pull walls and put our cameras where they need to be so we can get the right angles for it, you know, because it's not really, it's what your eye sees is more than what, you know, the camera can't always see what your eye sees unless it gets a certain angle on it, and that's what we've been able to do with the set. And we've copied it pretty precisely. I've had a lot of great comments, very satisfying, especially for all the money we spent. When people come into this, they're blown away by how realistic we are. We've even copied their ice maker, which took us a while to find.
A highlight of the show, I think, for many of us is the music. All original to the show?
Yes, all original music, written by a lot of local artists who are, you know, some well-known, some not so well-known, but all original artists, and all of our actors sing. Do the real, really do the thing, and you know, T-Bone Burnett produces all our music, and we basically have, you know, availed ourselves of some of the top musicians here in town, and who not only do they play on the tracks, but then we use them in the background a lot as well when we're shooting the show. So it's we try to keep very, very real to everything we're doing, especially when it comes to the music.
And the music is becoming its own success.
Yes, very much so. Very,
Yeah.
pleasing, yes. Yeah, we're doing very well with the music. Some of ours, I think like 7 of our songs were in the top 50 not too long ago. So yeah, the music itself has been successful, which lends a whole other revenue stream to the show, which is excellent too, which helps keep us on the air.
We among our guests tonight, we have the Commissioner of Tourism, Susan Whitaker, right here. And she and I and others have struggled for years to make Nashville more of a place for film and TV production. What are you finding to be the pluses or minuses of filming in Tennessee and in Nashville?
Well, I think, you know, one of the definite pluses is, I mean, one of the problems with television production lately, and we suffer from it, is that we're getting our scripts late. So when we get our scripts late, we have to move quickly and be able to change things quickly. And one of the things that I've found, you know, that we couldn't do in LA if I was shooting the show in LA, is that the cooperation we get from the city and the state, and being able to get permits quickly and move where we have to move and go where we have to go, has made it possible for us to do what we're doing here, which I don't think I'd be able to do if I was in LA getting our scripts this late. So that's a big advantage to us here, is being able to do that kind of thing here, and the cooperation we're getting has been, you know, huge. So that's made it a lot easier for us to do things here. You know, one of the disadvantages, I think, is just that we don't have the infrastructure that I'd have in some other cities. You know, and when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about crew base. We've basically hired, I think, most everyone we could hire here in town. And I've been flying in people all the time here, putting hotels and housing and per diem, which is expensive. There's some crew that's, you know, from here that's moved away, and slowly they're starting to come back. I think with our back 9 pickup, I think that's going to make a big difference too, because a lot of people are afraid to start coming back. They don't know if the show is going to last. You know, our business is very fickle. So now that they know the show's been picked up and we got it back 9 and we'll probably go for a second season or a third season, some of these people will start coming back and it'll help us in that particular respect. I can stop bringing as many people in and cut our costs and make it more financially feasible to do a show here. There's other things like camera cars and camera cranes and things like that, equipment and stuff that I have to ship in from Atlanta or from the Carolinas or from LA whenever we need them. So we've sort of adopted a whole different way of filming here that we sort of know if I'm going to shoot a car scene with somebody in the car, unless I have enough car stuff to make a day, I will probably go green screen and shoot the car green screen, because to bring in a camera car for a day, from Atlanta is expensive. If it's just for a couple of scenes, it doesn't make any sense. So we're going green screen, and hopefully no one notices.
Green screen is.
Well, green screen.
for those of us in the audience who don't know.
Green screen is, you've probably seen it before. We shoot we'll put a green screen outside the car. And we'll shoot, so you'll see the green screen, but then we send it to LA, and I'll send plates, which we shot of driving around Nashville, and they'll put into those, that where the green is, they'll replace it with the street going by, and you see it in a lot of movies. And so we have a back plate and a side plates and front plates and so on. So we have to shoot all those plates. We have a set of plates we shot from the pilot, so I can shoot certain things, in Green Hills and so on, those areas. But that's what we'll do now for a bunch of different things. We just shot today, we're up at the Walmart, and we used their parking lot to make it a airfield. And we put in a green screen where we're going to replace the Walmart with a jet. So,
The magic of television.
There you go.
You've shot all over the world and all over the country. What's the favorite location, excluding Nashville, that you've ever worked?
Oh, it's interesting. I shot in the Philippines, and I really, it was very challenging, and I guess that's why I loved it. It was very interesting in different cultures and stuff. I had a Malaysian art department and a Filipino crew with an Australian camera department, so it was that was a lot of fun. Other than that, I did a series in Chicago, which I loved. I did 4 years in Chicago, and that's just a great city, and I loved it.
That is a great city.
Yeah, it's a great city.
What's your favorite Nashville location so far?
My favorite Nashville location? We've been to so many places. I think, I'm hoping it's going to be the Bridgestone, because I shoot there next week. But, I don't know. There's a lot of different places. I mean, I've been into some of these recording studios, like the old RCA recording studio, which is the history. And seeing these places with the history just blows me away. I just love learning about these kind of things when I see them. I mean, we've shot in Belmead. We've shot, all over. We've shot LP Stadium. We've shot, East Nashville, which is a lot of fun to shoot in. But I just love the history. When I come into these different places and I hear about East Nashville and, where that is, and shot at Symphony Hall, and I've heard about the flood and the damage that it did there. I just love hearing about the history and what we're doing and, where we're going around here. So and especially these recording studios, because this is sort of new, not so new to me, but now I'm learning a lot more about it. So when I go into these recording studios and I hear who recorded there, and I start to get a feel for the Neve boards and so on and so forth, and I'm supposed to, I get to feel a little bit better about what I'm doing. And what really impresses me, I got to say, one of the nicest things, I was at the BMI Awards recently in the CMAs, and I had a bunch of people come up and they were saying to me, that they really loved the show, and what they loved about it was that we really used places like sound check, which is, I guess, where the bands will, set up to go out on the road. And, for me, that was not another one of these places that was not very visually stimulating, it's sort of, but, we went there and we spent the money to go there and did it. So when somebody came up and said that they noticed it and appreciated it, I felt a lot better about the money we were spending,
Any interesting, disappointing, or funny stories about a location shoot here so far?
Oh, interesting, funny, or I don't know. I mean, I think we shot at Sylvie Roberts' house. I don't know if you know that, out in Belmead, and we used it for the pilot, and we've built a big section of it on our stage. And Sylvie's has the house up for sale, and she's had it up for sale for quite some time now. And now she has a whole spread in the Times, So I thought, I probably should
get a commission.
We should get a commission, yeah.
Okay, business out of the way. Let's talk about Loucas George. Tell us about you.
About me. Well, I went to college to be a lawyer. I thought that's what I wanted to be. I mean, everybody else I knew was a lawyer. That's what you're supposed to do, I guess. And my brothers were both lawyers. I'm the youngest. I have two twin brothers who were older than me, and they went through law school. They graduated number 1 and 2 out of their class and got the best jobs you could get on Wall Street. And I was coming up, and then I went and saw them on Wall Street, and I said, oh, God, I don't want to do that. And I'd already taken my LSATs, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I'd taken classes in college that I thought would be, good for my cume. I thought they were so-called gut classes. I'd taken photography, and I'd taken acting, and theater appreciation. So I'd go on to Broadway all the time and see plays, and I aced all of those classes. So when the time came for it, I wasn't going to go, as a political science major. What are you going to do with that? I decided that maybe I'd try to check out this business, which seemed to be unobtainable, unobtainable to get into this business. But I had a contact, and I got work for free. I started working for free at a camera house, and started learning the cameras, and eventually they started giving me a salary, as little as it was. I think my girlfriend at the time was making more money than I was collecting unemployment. And I worked there, and eventually I got out, and I got into the union as a grip and a gaffer, and I did sound, and I've basically done most of the crafts, and eventually started producing a thing called Crazy Eddie commercials in New York, and then music videos, and then eventually I worked my way into movies and TV, and then you started going from California to New York back and forth, and eventually I realized I had to move to California if I was going to stay in the business. New York had a bad patch, and I moved out to Los Angeles, and thought, when I was in New York and I worked in New York, I used to have a lot of California people come in and work in New York, and they'd hire me, and I'd do all the work, and they'd get all the money and the credit, and I thought, I want to be one of those people.
And you grew up in Manhattan?
Grew up in Manhattan. Well, I grew up in Jersey. I was born in Manhattan, grew up in Jersey, and then came back into Manhattan as
So
soon as I
why did you
graduated
want to go?
college.
What was it about Wall Street that turned you off?
My brothers graduated number 1 and 2 in their class. They'd gotten jobs in the best law firms in Manhattan you could work in. And I went in on a weekend, and they looked like Bob Cratchit working in there. I was like, and they were still struggling to become partners at that point. And I was like, geez, after all of that, they're still struggling. I don't know if I want to do that.
Any second thoughts about that decision?
When things are bad.
When things are bad. You obviously had some orientation, though, to the entertainment business, the CUME courses you took, and thinking of this as an unattainable business, but making the effort. What can you point to anything? I mean, what did you watch as a kid? Is there anything that kind of inspired you in that direction?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember how I watched them, but I feel like I've seen just about every old movie that's ever been made. And the other thing was, my father used to take me to the movies a lot, and I used to see, and I'd go to see a lot of foreign films, and and then when I was in college, too, one of the things that I took was I wasn't great with languages, so I took Italian cinema and French film, which gave me language credits, but also gave me an education in Cocteau and Truffaut, and and some of the greats, and I started, I guess that's how it started for me. And I had an urban journalism class, which, back when I was in college, it was still, there weren't these beta cams. It was like big video cameras that you could shoot with. And I went out and started shooting and editing with them. And I was like, I liked telling stories that way. I also had writing classes and stuff. So all that stuff started blending itself to it. But I also have a business sense, that it was always, how do I make money and what do I do from a business sense? And this was a business, and when I got into it, and I could start doing commercials, and I could start making money that way, and we were doing things, and we were doing things different from other people. That sort of lit a fire, as well as working on movies. I think, some of the movies I worked on, Once Upon a Time in America, and I worked on some great films with some great people. And when you work on those things, and you see how the film comes out, and it's a great film, and you're part of it, and you've been part of it, that stays with you, And as I've come up, quite honestly, through the years, I mean, one of the things I've noticed is, I sort of feel like this is part of a legacy that you leave behind. I mean, making things that'll be, my grandchildren will be able to look at them and say, what did he do? So try to be more careful about some of the things I produce. I think in the beginning I used to let people push me around a little bit more, and they'd wind up with lousy pictures that my name was on, and I'd feel, ooh, don't want to do that again.
As a kid, did your creativity express itself in any other way?
I think, well, I was a football player, but that kept a lot of my time. But I think as a kid, I liked to draw and I liked to do things like that. I think it really came out when I was in college. I think more than anything else, when I started doing writing and photography and things like that. That sort of, and I appreciated the arts all the time. So when I started getting into that a little bit more, it became more of an interest for me than anything I've been doing before that, rather than just mathematics or even constitutional law.
You're a family guy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have.
Tell us about your family.
I have 2 sons. I have one 21 years old at Villanova, and I have an 11-year-old Angel, my son. I have 2 sons, and my wife in California, who comes out when she can, and I go back when I can. But this is pretty all-encompassing, so I haven't been doing a lot of it. But hopefully, if we get a second season, we'll move out here and get a house out here. But and I miss them. It's tough when you're traveling around in this business. My first son, I was gone a lot between the Philippines and traveling all over the place in different cities. So, it's a tough business in that particular respect. But, one of the good bad things about this business is when you're not doing a picture, you're unemployed. So you're home. So I'm home a lot.
Good news, bad news. Who's your hero in this industry?
My hero in this industry. I have a couple. I think Steven Spielberg is somebody who I have a lot of respect for. I think he made films that were strictly entertaining. I don't think he was going for, you notice that I don't think any of the Indiana Jones films ever won an Academy Award, or Star Wars or George Lucas or any of those. But I think they were great films that were made, to entertain people. And I think it's sort of the kid in them that came out in those films. And I think I like that. I like that somebody's, has a passion and they're doing something like that, and that it's more of just one film. There's several films. I think a lot of people come out and make one great film or make 2 or 3 great films, but they're different genres. But I think what they did with Indiana Jones and what they've done with Star Wars and some of these films, I think Jurassic Park, was a technological breakthrough at the time. Back, before Jurassic Park, everything was opticals. If you were gonna, to do the thing that they did in Jurassic Park with the dinosaurs and so on would have been next to impossible, if not, cost prohibitive, and he came out with a whole new technology with E-film and was able to make things in Jurassic Park with the dinosaurs that has changed the whole industry. And I think similar now with Cameron with Avatar and the things that he's done there. I just think that's being able to think outside the box and really, put your vision, out there is.
And with technology, there are really no limits anymore.
No, there isn't actually. There used to be a time when, when I was dealing with visual effects with shows, the question used to be, and still is sometimes, unfortunately, because people don't understand it, that they'd say, "Can we do this? Can we do this? If I want to do this, can I do this?" And the visual effects company would come in and talk to you about whether they could do it or not, or how they might try to do it. Now they can do anything. So for me now, when a director says, "Can I do this?" Alarm bells go off, because visual effects companies are buying new houses based on, can we do this? They can do anything. It's just a question of how much, and is this a smart way to do it? So basically, it's anything we want to do, we can do. It's can we afford to do it? And can we afford to do it the way that they want to do it? Because everything has a different parameter to it. Little nuances of the way something is shot can change its costs, a great deal.
Okay. A couple more questions, and I'm going to come to the audience. So have your questions in mind, and we'll be there in a moment. Of the projects you've done, what you said you're more careful about what you do. What are you which project are you most proud of?
Well, hopefully it's going to be Nashville. I think Nashville is
we
I'm pretty proud of Nashville.
Before
Nashville, I did a show called Early Edition in Chicago, which I'm pretty proud of. I thought was a great show. It was about Kyle Chandler, you probably know from Friday Night Lights, used to get a newspaper a day ahead of time from a cat, and he'd have to go out and change the future. And so we shot a lot all around Chicago, and there was stunts, and it was, I was pretty proud of what we did in that show. And I had a great team together with our writers in LA. We would work, because it's always tough to do a show where your writers are in LA and your production is someplace else. Like now we're in Nashville, our writers are in LA. Chicago was a similar situation, and I think that, what we had there was just a great system where, we'd come up with ideas or places and things that we could do, and we'd send them to the writers, and they'd be writing scripts around them, or they'd send us things in advance, and we'd be able to work back and forth. So by the time we got to the actual filming, we were actually making it better and better and better, and it was like making a little movie every 8 days. And we made a lot of little movies in 8 days, and I was pretty proud of the work. We did some great work there.
Which one do you wish you hadn't done?
I had a movie that was brought to me. It was Adam Baldwin and Teresa Russell, and it was a great script. It was about Adam Baldwin wasn't happy necessarily with his wife, and he happened to be on a sales trip, and he met Teresa Russell in a bar, and she wasn't happy with her husband, and she suggested that they kill each other's spouse. And we've seen it's like a Hitchcock type plot, and then at one point, Adam Baldwin's wife's car goes off of a bridge, and car gets washed away, and you never find her body, and Teresa Russell says that she killed him, so no, Adam's supposed to kill her husband. But there was the opening scene in the film, which was something that I totally fell in love with, was, you're looking up in the sky, and you see a dot coming towards you, and you realize the dot's a car, and the car swipes the lens and smashes into the water. And Adam Baldwin wakes up, from a dream. And throughout the picture, Adam Baldwin keeps on, having these dreams where he's swimming down to the car to try to save his wife and pull his wife out of the car. And so you see that over and over and over again. And in the end, you find out that his wife never actually died. She wasn't in the car, that she was in cahoots with Teresa Russell, and they were doing this for the insurance money, but the visuals there, I really just loved, and I wanted, I just saw the whole picture in my head, and I was, loved doing it. And I got called, when we finished the picture, I got called off onto another picture, so I didn't stay through post. And the director took it over, and this is something I made a mistake with, won't do again. and he, I came in for a screening with him at one point, and the dream sequences were indistinguishable from the rest of the picture. You couldn't tell what you were looking at, it was, and I said, you're going to do something with that. You're going to make them black and white, or you're going to do something with that, right? Because it's confusing. Oh, and he said he was going to do something with the sound, and you would know, and he didn't, and it ruined the picture. And my name is on it.
Talking about that, you use the word producer, director. Mm-hmm. The producer is the quarterback. You're the man in charge, right?
Well, at television and movies, it's different. Yeah, the producer, I'm sort of the... there's a lot of different producers, as you probably can tell. You see the credits as like 9. However, they can go on forever with producers, and a lot of different kinds of producers. So if you created the show, you're a producer. There's a lot of producer titles they tend to give out all the time. If you're a writer and they don't want to give you a raise, they make you a producer. If you're, if you have talent that's really hard to get, and you're an agent, you could become a producer. I'm the producer who basically produces a show, so I get the produced by credit as opposed to just another producer. I'm the person who's sort of between the studio with the money and the creative team. So it's my sort of responsibility to deliver a widget that they can use. I think if it's all creative and there's no responsibility for the money or the cost, then you wind up with something which you can't afford, and no one, And if it's all money and there's no creative, then you wind up with something that nobody wants to watch. So there's a delicate balance that goes on there, and I'm sort of the person that's sort of responsible for bringing in something that people want to watch that can be produced for a responsible number. And so I have that little bounce back and forth. I have creative people coming to me with ideas that they want to do things, and I have to sometimes pull the reins back and say, no, we can't do that because this is a television show. We're not making a movie. And by the same token, I have people I have, the studio coming to me and sort of saying, this is all the money you have, and I have to go back to them and sort of say, then, we're not making the show that you're going to want or need or that's going to sell. We need more money. We need to be realistic about what we're doing here. If we're going to make the show, we're going to make the right show. We're going to have the show that's going to bring people back and watch it again. And these are the things we need to spend the money on.
Well, when you go out to the location of the sound stage, and it looks like you're about to wage a war instead of make a TV show with everybody screwing around, it looks like you're the general. So we'll assume that. Question from the audience. And we've got microphones coming to you.
Could you discuss the difference in cost of filming this here as opposed to Los Angeles?
Good question.
It's interesting. Obviously, I have the costs which I wouldn't have for filming in Los Angeles. I probably brought in about 30 or 40 people, which, not only their airfares, but their housing and per diem, put them in apartments and so on. So that's a cost which I wouldn't have. Every time I have to bring talent in or a director, for every episode as a different director, I'm paying airfares and I'm paying hotel for them to come in and do that. As I say, there's certain things that I have that are, if I wanted to bring in a camera crane or if I'm going to bring in something, it's going to be, instead of a 1-day rental, it'll be a 3 or a 4-day rental because I'll have to bring it in over time. But on the other side of it, we have incentives, which the state has given us here, which offsets some of those costs, and I think that's sort of the balance which we deal with here in terms of, how much incentives. There's a lot of, everyone's sort of giving incentives. As a matter of fact, a lot of work has left Los Angeles because of that, because of Louisiana and Connecticut and a lot of states which are giving big incentives. So a lot of the money which we spend on that kind of thing for hotels and rental cars and so on and so forth is offset by the incentives. So in the end, you look at what you're spending against what you're getting in incentives, and as long as it gets to a number that's, commensurate with what you might spend in Los Angeles has other, when I go out to rent a location here, people are usually excited about the fact that we're going to rent the location and we get it at a reasonable cost, especially for what it is for what we're doing in television. On the other side of it, when I go out to rent a location in Los Angeles, there's so many people who've shot in Los Angeles, so many big movies that have shot in Los Angeles. Inevitably, you can't go anywhere, like, I want to rent your house, and they'll say, well, the last movie that shot here paid us this much money, and it raises all of those costs. So our location costs in Los Angeles are quite substantial as opposed to here. So there's that little bit of give and take that goes on with that. So like I say, there's certain things that are cost me more money here. There's certain things that cost me a little bit less money here. And I think the incentives tend to balance it out. And more, I think, comes into play, what we can and can't do here. And I have certain advantages with the music business being here, I think, with this particular show, which offsets a lot of stuff where I might not be able to shoot a car shot because I'm not going to get the camera car in from Atlanta for a scene, which I would probably just do and not think about in Los Angeles. So I shoot a little bit differently here, but being able to have the music that we produce here so easily produced because we have such resources available to us, and it's such a natural thing to be able to walk into a recording studio and do something here, offsets a lot of that. I think it helps this show be what it is here.
Okay. Another question?
Hi, I'm also from New York, and I grew up on your Crazy Eddie ads.
Ah, thank you.
So they were quite a blast. And I'll be happy to tell my siblings I've met you, because now we know the man behind those ads. I have, it's kind of 3 questions, but it's really one, which is, number 1, how did you know that there was a story to tell, the story of Nashville? Number 2, who's telling you the story? And then 3, how did you get LA to buy into the story?
Interesting questions. I'm a independent director, independent producer, so I produce for different studios. And basically what happens is when a studio gets a script that they're going to actually spend money on, then they'll come to somebody like me to say, we want you to produce the show, and here's, how much is it going to cost us to produce this show, and what is that? The development aspects of this show, it started with, started with Steve Buchanan over at Gaylord, who wanted to do a show. He thought the country was at the right time and the right place, especially with certain shows like American Idol and so on. And he went to his agency, CAA, to talk about developing a show. And they introduced him to Callie Curry, who is originally from Nashville and wrote Thelma and Louise, and who, basically had the chops for this kind of a script. And she worked with R.J. Cutler, who'd done a bunch of documentaries before that, but was also, a filmmaker, and they got together and they came up with the script for this show through CAA, and then they shopped it around to different studios, and ABC and Lionsgate. And Lionsgate were the ones who were interested in it and took it to ABC, because then you have to get the show picked up, greenlit for the pilot, greenlit. And they took it to, ABC to say, would they be interested in making a pilot out of this show? So when ABC got on board and said, yes, we're interested in making a pilot, but you're going to do it as a partner with us, with our studio, which is ABC Studios, then they brought me in. To produce the show. And what I do normally, at that particular time, like I say, pilot season, I'll get a bunch of different scripts and I'll look through the scripts and, try to, of the ones that are being offered to me, try to pick the one that I think is going to go. Because like I say, out of 20 pilots, I might only do 4. So you have to try to make sure you're going to do, maximize your chances. As a matter of fact, I was online with ABC. I was supposed to go to Northern Ireland, not go to Ireland and shoot a Beauty and the Beast series for them over there when this came up, and I jumped at this script because I thought it was better than the one I was going to go to Ireland to do, even though Ireland was pretty exciting.
Long way from Hollywood.
Yeah.
Great questions. One more. Another? Here's one up here.
So, given we have this mindset that it takes a week to do a show because you're working with, I don't know if that's reality or not. What's kind of the typical episode schedule that you guys work? And are you shooting from Lake Rail?
We shoot all over. Right now, I'm at the stage. We're shooting right as we speak at our studio, which is off of Brick Church Park Lane off Trinity on 65 there. We do this. Well, I'd say lower-end television shows, cable shows, some of them might do 7 days for an episode. Normal network show will do about 8. When they start getting bigger, like Lost or Heroes and stuff, they could do as many as 10 or 12 days per episode. We're currently at 9 days for an episode. So every 9 days we shoot an episode. And on the 9th day, we double up, which means the first day of the next episode and the 9th day of the last episode shoot on the same day. So I have 2 crews shoot at the same time. And I actually wind up bringing in another, 10 to 15 people every 9 days to supply that double up crew. So yeah, 9 days to produce an episode. That's 9 days of filming, and then it goes back to California for post. And I'd say anywhere from 3 weeks with a panicked post department to 6 to 8 weeks is what we need for post to finalize a show to get it on the air.
Business looks very glamorous, but it's very hard work.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting when I have a lot of people want to come out to the set, and they come out to the set, and then they feel like they're watching paint dry as we shoot a same scene like over and over and over again. Somebody just walking through a door, which might be, 3 seconds or 5 seconds of the actual film. I think you have to love it, or you wouldn't be in it, because it is a very hard business. So, it's interesting for me to see when I see people come into the business, and they you can tell if they're going to stay or not, because after their couple, to a third or fourth 14-hour day, if they're not ready to come in to work the next day, then that's fine. I have a lot of people who work with me all the time. I bring with me all the time. They work with me, and these people, that they're hopeless fools, because they're not even asking how much they're being paid. They just do what they're going to, they'll work however many hours they have to work to do it. And we sort of subjugate every other aspect of our lives to do what we do. And I don't know why, but we do.
I asked Lucas if he was through for the day, and your answer was?
No, I'm going to be going back to the studio when we're done here, to see where we are, make sure we're okay.
Is there another question from the audience? Okay, we'll go back here and we'll look at you again in a little bit. There's lots of discussion right now about and you referred to it in terms of your own career, but lots of discussion about the quality of film and television these days and its influence on our culture and other issues. How do you rate the quality of what we consume as entertainment consumers today?
I think we're in a very interesting time. I've watched the business change over the years, and I think there was a time when television first came out and there was radio, and then television came out, and I think a lot of people, if you look at the old television shows that first came out, they were sort of trying to make a radio program on television because they didn't understand what television was. And I think we're at a very similar time right now with the internet. I think the internet has come out and people are trying to make television shows on the internet, and they don't understand that this is a whole different genre. I think it's not just, the internet and television are one and are going to become one and are becoming one, I guess, just by the question that was asked earlier on in terms of how many people actually watch this show in its time slot. And it's, I think, very indicative of what's going on in the business right now. I mean, this business still has a lot of very archaic things that it still, goes by. I mean, sweeps week, which I don't know if you know what that is, but sweeps week is when, the advertisers, there's a couple of weeks when the advertisers base the ratings for a show on what they're going to pay for that show. And there's the Nielsen ratings, and Nielsen ratings I think are very inaccurate in themselves. Anyway, it's a Nielsen family, and they tuned into the show, and then they extrapolate how many people are watching that show at that particular time. And based on that, and based on this little sweeps period, that's what they set the advertising rates for, and that's what people, pay to advertise on television, especially network television, which has now become, probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had 4 acts, which meant there were commercial breaks during those 4 acts. Now there's 6 acts, and I think anybody who's watching television in the normal sense of it is probably appalled by how many commercials you have to go through before you see the show again. And I think this is just driving people away from television and driving them away from the normal viewing experience of coming in and watching it at a specific night that you want to watch this show. So a lot of people are either getting their shows from iTunes or Netflix, or they're going on and watching the show at a different time when they can watch it, which is good for them, and which it makes a lot more sense. I mean, there's a lot of series out now that people, with Burn Notice or Homeland or whatever, and people are going on and watching the whole series or catching up on it, which has changed the whole thing. I think shows like Lost and so on, one of the things that they suffered from is you might get hooked watching Lost, but if you tune in on episode 10 or 11, you didn't know what was going on, and it was hard to start bringing new audience there. So a lot of these shows would start to lose audience as they went along, but they weren't bringing any new audience in because people could not catch up to what was going on. They were lost at some point during the show. So now you can tune in when you want to watch it and catch up on all the shows you haven't watched. And I think it's changing everything. And it's similar to what happened with the movie business in terms of, now if you're watching things on the internet, you can watch it when you want to watch it. And not only can you watch it when you want to watch it, but we can tell you're watching it. We know who you are, and we know what you're spending, and what they know when you tune into the internet is a lot better than these Nielsen ratings. So I think the advertisers actually get a lot more bang for their buck if they're buying into the internet as they are buying into the Nielsen ratings. And I think basically at this point, so if you can watch things on the internet when you want to watch them, which is the way people are starting to watch television, and you can actually do click-throughs and so on. So there's so many things you can do on the internet that they aren't even taking advantage of as of yet. I mean, you could be, if you're watching, a James Bond film and you like his Aston Martin, I mean, it'd be nothing to put a little tag thing on the bottom, and you could click on your screen, and at the end you could get like a little advertisement which would give you $2,000 off if you wanted to buy that Aston Martin, which is not something you could do on television. You can do that on the internet. So there's a whole new way of selling things, which is what this is all about. I mean, television not too long ago was soaps, was what they called it, because they were selling soap. There was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and Kraft Theater, and these were all products. And now, I think it's going to go back to that, I think, with the internet. And I think people are going to, and with that going to the internet, you don't need the networks anymore. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the cost of these shows, but if you can put something on the internet and you're going to watch it, whether it's on Netflix, which is starting to do direct to video themselves, they're making shows just for Netflix. Then if you find a show that you like, and there's a lot of them out there. I mean, my kids are watching it. There's a show out for Halo right now. It's a 5-part series, and I'm impressed with it, and you get it on YouTube. So if you can create shows like that, then you don't need the networks, and I think then you don't need the 43-minute format or the 1-hour format. I mean, the attention spans are going down too. So I think the culture is changing, I think, basically with the internet, and when people start to learn to use the internet for the internet as opposed to trying to make it television. it will change everything. It's going to change a lot, and I think it's going to be in schools. It's going to be everywhere. I think it's just going to become, an homogenous type of thing, which is going to change the way we look at things, change the way we view things, change the way we buy things, and change the way people sell to us.
Part of my work life is in politics. And I saw a report yesterday for the first time that placed cable as a consumption spot for people learning more about politics over networks. Having heard what you just said, and also seeing what looks like a run of a lot of quality shows on places like HBO and Showtime. What's the future of the networks?
I'm afraid for the networks that unless they could be like the record labels with iTunes, if they don't recognize what's happening and they jump on the bandwagon and start to work with it, they're going to go that way. They're going to lose it. I mean, right now the cable networks used to be a situation where they weren't even rated. And if you did a cable show, it was nothing. I mean, now I think a lot of directors and a lot of people prefer to do HBO and prefer to do, some of these shows on cable than they would to do network shows. There's only a few network shows that they'd like to do. So I think the networks are slowly, they're losing audience. A successful share now in network was a abysmal share like 10 years ago, because there were only 4 networks and the cable stations weren't as prominent as they are now. But now cable has taken over so much. You look at the Emmy Awards and you see how many cable shows have won Emmys versus how many network shows, and you can see what's happening. And I think that, the networks still have the playing field to a certain extent, and if they can work it and they can work the advertisers and they can start to make that connection between, I think, people do things with network shows and cable shows where they have behind the scenes. You can go on the internet and watch behind the scenes, or, now, like I say, you can catch up on the shows, which is one good thing, but it's also taking away from network share. So they're sort of not working with each other to a certain extent. You can catch up on your shows, so now you can gain audience that hadn't watched your first 5 shows. But are they going to watch it at Wednesday at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock? No, they're going to get used to watching it on the internet, and they're going to watch it on the internet all the time. So now, what we have now, it's +3s and +7s. So you'll get your Nielsen ratings after the show's aired, and then our +3s and +7s are practically 50% higher.
And your +3s and +7s are the watching it outside of its
outside of its airtime, watching it 3
over
days
some
within the
other-
first 3
over some
days or
other
within the
medium.
7 days, exactly, over some other medium, and they can track that. So those are the numbers which are really starting to count more and more. And I think if the networks can start figuring out ways to make the shows work with each other, and I think there's lots of ways, I won't get into it now, but I think there's lots of ways that you can use the internet in smart ways, which will draw audience to your show and draw audience from your show back to the internet, where you can sell some product at the same time on the internet. When the networks start doing things like that, as opposed to just using it as some like additional advertising platform or some other platform which is going to draw audience away, then and they have the playing field. Like I say, they have the advertisers, they have the money at this particular point. So if they go there, I think they have a future. If they don't, I think they're going to be doomed. People like, College Humor, and some of these other websites are going to start becoming their own networks.
If you could make your dream production, what would it look like?
I've always dreamt of winning the lottery and getting myself, a television studio on an island somewhere, and bringing out a lot of young actors and making like Aesop's Fables or something for kids, and just having people, because I'd love to do some great things for kids. I think that'd be a great thing to do, and bringing in some young actors and really playing with it. So that would be my nice way to sort of sail into the sunset.
Well, I hope you win the lottery. We've talked about the schedule, 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
Are you shooting? You shoot 7 days a week?
We shoot 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So you go Monday through Friday, then Monday through Thursday is your 9-day schedule?
No, we have Monday through Friday, and then it'll change. Obviously, the next episode then will start on that. So if we end on a Thursday, the next episode starts on a Friday.
Okay.
So it jumps back and forth, and the schedule obviously has a lot to do. That's a juggling thing in itself, because you'll start on a Monday. Let's say you start out on a Monday, you'll start at 6 a.m. in the morning, let's say, and you want to schedule all your daylight exteriors early on, because that's when you're going to get early start, because you have to do an 11-hour turnaround on your DP and a 12-hour turnaround on your actors. So, if you don't finish until, if you finish, 14 hours after a 6 a.m. call, you're finishing at, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So your next day, you can't start until 8. By the time you get to Friday, sometimes you're not starting until 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So you don't want to be shooting daylight exteriors at 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when you start scheduling your night shots that you have to do. So depending on when an episode starts and when an episode ends, because the turnarounds stay the same, it affects the way you shoot things.
And you've got the deadline.
And you have a deadline, big time.
Do you ever get to that deadline and it's not where you want it to be, but you say, I just got to let it go? Or what do you do as a creative person with with high standards?
I've never said just let it go. No, we'll figure out a way to do it. I'll figure out some way to making it work somehow.
But it's a drop dead deadline, isn't it?
Yeah, it's drop dead deadline, and you got to make them. That's it. So that's part of my job, is to make sure that we make them.
So what's that ninth day look like sometimes? How many hours in that ninth day sometimes?
Well, I try not to go over 14 hours. It starts becoming dangerous with the crew. But I just did a 15-hour night last night, which I'm not happy about. But and I've pulled the plug on directors where they've gotten to their 14th hour, and I'm going to pull a plug. But I know that when I pull a plug, that I'm going to be able to pick up that shot down the road with the next show, or that I'm going to bring in a crew to shoot that other show, and I'll put out a second unit, and that's little tricks that you have to do to make it work, and sometimes I'll look to see where we're shooting and think, this would be absolutely fantastic to shoot here, but it's going to take me hours to get this shot, and if I shot right over there, it might not be as fantastic, but it'll be good, and I can get it done, and it'll show up on the screen. I mean, there's all that give and take that comes into it, because if I have a great location, it really looks fantastic, and it's going to add something to the story, but it's going to take 5 hours to shoot, then I have less time with the actors later on in the next scene, and performance is as important as visuals are. So, you don't want to sacrifice. That's the give and the take of it. Do you go for the beautiful location and then wind up not giving the actors the time that they need to shoot the shot, right, and give you the performance that you need? Or do you keep the time and say, this is a good location. It's not a great location, but it's a good location, but it's going to give me more hours, so I'm going to get a better performance from the actors, and I'm going to go for that.
Talent, fun to work with or a pain?
Fun to work with. Yeah, they're fun. Of course, there's different talents. It's like there's some talent are fun and some talent are challenging.
Your favorite talent experience?
My favorite talent experience. I don't know. I've worked with some great people. I worked with Ernest Borgnine. I've worked with, and some of these guys. What I love about them, the old timers, is that they'll, where some of the young kids are coming in and they're more concerned about the size of their trailer, or can they be shot out so they can go skiing, or can they leave, and people like Ernest Borgnine and some of the others I've worked with, they'll hang on the set the whole time with you and just tell you the old stories and hang out, and they want to be there, they want to watch what's going on, they love the business, and that's why they're there. So I love working with some of the older guys, the people who've been doing it for a long time, and it's just great watching and hanging with them.
Least favorite talent experience?
My least favorite talent experience? Well, I worked with an actress who remained nameless, who didn't want to really do television. She'd done mostly feature films, and but they made her an offer she couldn't refuse financially. And a lot of what they get here, they have a thing called pay or play, which means that you're guaranteed to make this money whether you work or not. So you're pay or play, and. So I think some people, and this woman in particular, I think, took the show and decided that she was going to make herself such a pain that we would just pay her, have her go away, and she would just make her money and not have to do television. So she came in and was quite a challenge.
No elaboration?
No, I think, the only thing I could say is that there was some after we finally got rid of her. she was sad to go because she had made enough friends on the show. I mean, that's one of the things I think that's different from movies in terms of television. Movies, you come in, you do a movie, and at the end, you've sort of made some great friends, but you're gone, you know, and you don't see them again for however long. Where television can go for 3 or 4 years, you can get a good run on it, and you sort of make a family, and the family stays together, and it's nice. That's why I like television over movies, and I think that she started to realize that she had a family, but she screwed it up, and bye-bye.
What do you do when you're not working?
There's
For fun.
very little of that. I hang with my son as much as I can because I feel like, people ask me if I play golf or anything like that, and I don't. I just don't. I feel guilty if I'm spending that much time doing something that I could be with my son, and spending time with him. I mean, I'm away from him a lot now, so if I have time off and I can spend time with my son, that's what I try to do, is be there with him as much as possible. And quite honestly, it's a lot of fun.
What's your favorite movie or TV show?
That's a tough question because I have so many. I mean, I love. TV shows. I mean, one of the shows I always loved, and I have to say, I mean, favorite is hard to say. It's like picking your favorite son or your favorite daughter or something.
Right.
But I use it a lot when I'm talking to people. Is that The Honeymooners? As far as television goes, because I think The Honeymooners still play today. I mean, that's a great show. It was just written well. I mean, there's no chase scenes. There's no people taking off their clothes and having sex. I mean, that takes place in a one-room set where they even have the lighting painted on the wall. So, I mean, all of this stuff which we value so much in terms of making a show, with, we got to have this and we got to have that, and every actor has to be young and good looking. I mean, The Honeymooners was none of that, and it was a great show, and it still plays today. So I always talk about, if you want to make a great show, it has nothing to do with all these other things that people talk about in terms of, it's about good writing and good show, and I think that, real life stories, which I think The Honeymooners was, which is why it's always has been one of my favorite television shows, as well as Twilight Zone and places like that. As far as movies go, I have so many favorite movies. I mean, I love Frank Capra, and I loved It's a Wonderful Life, and Magnificent Seven, and Gone with the Wind. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I love Lena Wertmüller and Swept Away and Seven Beauties, and I could, it's hard to pick. They're all so different.
Understand. Understand. If you weren't in this business, what would you want to be?
The son of a wealthy parent.
Wouldn't we all? That's a good answer. We've got some students in the audience who, some of whom might crave a career like yours. What would you advise? What advice would you give them?
I think doing it is the best advice I could give somebody. I mean, especially now with the business the way it is, where you can, things that I used to have to do, go into an edit house and spend thousands of dollars to do, you can do on your Mac computer now. And I think, I think doing it is you think, if this was such a good idea, someone else would have done it. Well, not true. Do it. I think if you can, they say, failing is a good thing. So if you could have 10 failures under your belt, you're closer to getting something going. That's going to happen. And I think that's probably one of the best things to do, is just think about things and do it. And I also think that one of the things that I've had a lot of people talk about not copying, that, you don't want to, and so they didn't necessarily study the greats, and I think that's a mistake. I think, you look at Hitchcock, you look at Truffaut, you look at some of the greats in filmmaking, and you see what they did and their technique, and they become tools that you can then use later on yourself. You're not copying, you're learning that way. So I think it's great to study, to look at what people did and look at what you like about what people did, and being able to use that yourself and taking it someplace else. I mean, I think that one of the things that's missing now, and I'm always disappointed in it actually with students, is that there's some I like nonlinear storytelling, like Pulp Fiction and stuff like that, which I think is sorely lacking. I think the Western you know, culture has done a very, you know, beginning, middle, and end storyline type thing for so long. And, you know, it works, and we love it. But there's other ways of telling a story, and especially with this medium. And I thought when kids actually had access to things that we never had, you know, where they can shoot things with their own video cameras, and they can sit down with their own editing systems, and they can start playing with things, that we would start seeing so many new things come out with new ideas and new ways of doing things. And quite honestly, I've been disappointed in terms of what I've seen coming out, that it's all been very copy of, well, I guess I don't copy, but it's all very normal, you know, and I think there's no experimentation, there's no new way of telling a story that people have sort of discovered. And I would have thought with this new medium that, you know, it's like a new way of painting, it's like a new way of writing, that somebody would be coming out with something new, that the kids would be coming out with something that I could see and sort of say, wow, isn't that great? And I haven't seen enough of it, you know, and I'm a little disappointed.
We'll close. Your prediction about the future of Nashville, the show.
I'm thinking that this show can have a very long life. I do. I think that the country is a market that hasn't been served well, and I think it's been misunderstood. I think country is a pretty wide genre, and I think there's a lot of people. I think it's the middle of the country. It's a strong, and I think where certain shows that sort of came out, like Star Trek and so on, that came out and, you know, they didn't think it was a success. They actually took it off the air, and then the fans were so outraged by it that they put the show back on the air, and it became such a huge franchise because they were sci-fi fans. And I think that this show, as long as it stays true to being the true Nashville as opposed to a caricature, because there's so many caricatures out there, I think that we'll have a hardcore fan base that'll stay with this show, because they'll know that the Bluebird is a Bluebird and the Opry is the Opry, and that the music is the music, and that this is something which is serving them. So I think our hardcore base, like the Star Trek fans, will keep this show on the air. If we're true to them, they'll stay true to us, and I'm hoping that we can stay on the air for a long time, and, you know, I can ride this into the sunset.
Move the family from Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Tom.
And we thank you for what you're contributing to our city and our state.
I love your city, and I love this state.
And thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Give him a hand.